Okay, so hello and welcome everyone. First of all, very good evening to all of you who is watching this session, and I will be your host for this session, and I will just quickly introduce myself. So I'm Chanchal, currently a senior undergrad pursuing my bachelor's from the System Institute of Technology, and I'm a Microsoft Azure lead for Gwalior region. And I will be gonna, just like without wasting much time, I will gonna introduce the our speaker for today's session. She's the speaker of the session is Hamantika Mitra, and she is technical support engineer at Microsoft. And I would love to hear more from her. Yeah, Hamantika, over to you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Chanchal, and the entire team for inviting me for this session, and all the viewers who have joined us today. I thank you all for your time as well because I understand it's a weekend, so it really means a lot for you to come up and give some time for this session. So, hi. I'm Hemantika, and like Chanchal mentioned, I'm working at Microsoft right now, supporting the Outlook or the Exchange team. Though I'm a support engineer by profession, but other than that, I'm very active in the community. That being said, I actively participate in public speaking and also in other community led events like hackathons, other webinars, the workshops, and more such events. So that is all about me. And without any further delay, I don't want to keep any of you waiting too much or too long on a weekend. So we'll just get started. And also before we start, I'll just send out a little prayer because of all that is going on in the world today, the fight between Ukraine and Russia. And I hope that everybody is safe and the peace restores very soon. And that's all that I had to add. And one more thing before we start with the presentations, I love sessions to be interactive. So make sure that you drop in all your queries. And if the time is limited and we cannot answer your queries on the session itself, I'm very active on social media, be it LinkedIn and Twitter. You can ask me anytime, and my DMs are always open. So yeah, I'll just get started with sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible. If Chanchal, you can say it from your end.
It's not right now. Like, yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, just let me know if when I'm good to go.
Just give a minute.
Yeah.
It's not coming up in the
Ma'am,
screen.
can you please retry sharing your screen? There's some. Yeah,
Yeah.
now
Yeah,
it's
it
visible.
I
is. It is.
It's visible. It's visible now, please.
Okay. So you see the introduction to Azure screen in full screen, right? Chanchal
Yeah,
or
it is. It is
yeah.
visible. Yes.
Okay. So great. I know that these things happens a lot, and over 2 years of pandemic, I think we have heard is my screen visible, am I audible a lot of times, and it has just become a set of another routine. So, welcome you all to today's session that will be introduction to Azure. Before we get started, this session will be very beginner friendly. That being said, it is level 100, and I will try to explain terms in as simple way as possible and give by examples that all of us can understand. So, the main takeaway of this session should be that you have some idea about cloud, you have some idea about Azure, and you also know how to use the Azure portal and how you can use the different services. So that is all that I'll be trying to cover in this session. And I hope at the end of this session, all of you carry away with you some knowledge about cloud computing, about Azure. And if at all there is something that you want to add, you can always reach out to me. Going forward, I'll be your host, and I'm Hemantika. I have already given an introduction about myself, so there's nothing more to add. Here is my Twitter profile. It's Hemantika M. If you have any questions, be it about anything, if not Azure, there are other tech stacks that I am comfortable in, especially low code or no code platforms, and also in open source and be it anything or any career related advice or anything at all. My DM is always open. So if anything at all that I can help anybody with, please make sure that you reach out to me. We'll start with the very first question, that is, what is cloud computing? And this session I want it to be very interactive. As you see the questions, make sure that even you drop in your comments and say about what is your understanding of cloud computing, or what is your understanding of cloud. I would love to read them, if not now, eventually when the session is published on YouTube. So, when we hear about cloud computing, the first word that we see is cloud. So, these are two separate words, there is cloud and there is computing. When we think of the word cloud, what is it that comes to your mind? In today's generation, where everybody has a smartphone or has a computer on a laptop, and we have seen the pictures that we click or the memes that we share, it is being saved in our phone memory, and it is also being saved as a backup somewhere else. If you're an Android user, it is being saved in a Google Drive. If you are an iOS user, it is being saved in your Apple Cloud. And the thing, when we talk about Google Drive or Apple Cloud, we can see the application, but cloud is an imaginary thing. So in that Google Drive or in that Apple Cloud, our pictures or the memes or anything at all, or any content that we have, it can also be documents, it can also be Google Sheets, it can be various, or it can be PDFs, everything is getting saved there. So Google Drive is acting as our storage, very similar to what we see in our laptop. So if I were to download these slides, like I made the slide in Canva, and if I were to download this, it gets saved in my file manager in my computer's hard disk. Okay, so I can see the storage in my computer. But when this comes to cloud, it everything is there in the internet, it is there in an imaginary box, but it is not it is not costing our own memory. You can have thousands of photographs there in Google Drive, and you are not using any of your phone's memory. So that being said, you should, now that you know what cloud is, so that is about cloud, that the imaginary part that helps us to do things that computer does for us. So the word computing is what gets attached to it. Other than storage, what is it that computing has or includes? That is, there are databases, there is network, then there is software analytics, there is intelligence. When it comes to intelligence, there is also other things, like there is machine learning, there is AI. All of these, they require huge computing powers. But with cloud computing, all of these can be reduced, and we actually wouldn't need there is the need of heavy hardwares, or the need of heavy infrastructure doesn't need to be there with the help of cloud computing. So that was the gist. And with this, it helps us to reduce cost a lot. It makes things very fast and flexible and scalable for us. So because of all of these, cloud computing is the buzzword and has been so for many years now. And it's only now that so many companies are going hybrid, or going or shifting totally to cloud. So this is what I wanted to convey about cloud computing in general. And I hope with the example of Google Drive and the example of Apple Cloud, you now have an idea about what cloud is. And if we add computing features to that, and if we see the different cloud providers that are there by the big companies, you'll get to know about how this is actually put into computing, how it is actually being used by other companies, and how we as users or developers can use cloud as well. So the today's topic is about introduction to Azure, and I'll be covering about Azure a lot. So what is Azure? Like I mentioned about cloud providers. So Azure is a cloud provider by Microsoft. Similarly, there are other two leading cloud providers, and I'm sure you all must have heard about that. There is Google Cloud Platform, there is AWS. Each of them has their own benefits, each of them has their own pros and cons. And like they have other features which is better in some. There are some features which is which is lacking in one but is there in the other one. But the basic foundations or the basic fundamentals of cloud computing is the same in three. So if you understand what is cloud and computing and the fundamentals, you'll know that switching from one platform to another wouldn't be a big deal for you. So Azure, like I mentioned, it is Microsoft's cloud service provider, and it helps your business or your organization to meet their current business needs. And since this the what I wrote in the content here in the slide, it leads a lot about the business challenges. But even as a student or even as a developer, if I'll show you an example and a demo right after we are done with the theory, you'll see that when it comes to you about building a website and hosting it, and when it comes to maintaining the infrastructure, when it comes to maintaining the backend, you'll see that there are a lot of things that you have to do. What if you don't need to stress about all of this? You just need to stress on the code, and all of these will be handled by cloud. So that is where, as developers, you can use cloud and also Azure. And the next slide will also talk about how Azure is going to benefit you, and why you should perhaps use Azure. And other than that, it also gives you the freedom to build, manage, store, and deploy applications on a huge network using the tools and frameworks. And the best part is, if you are a developer and if you want to collaborate with GitHub and or PowerShell and Azure, all of these can be done within the portal itself. And as you learn more and more about Azure, you'll see how easy it is, especially how easy it makes the task difficult for every level of people, for organizations, for students, for technical people, for non-technical people, and for everyone. It makes technology so much more accessible and easy for everyone to use. So that is a brief about Azure. And I'm not sure if you have heard about terms like IaaS, PaaS, then there is SaaS. IaaS, it stands for infrastructure as a service, where cloud is giving the infrastructure to you as a service. Infrastructure, that being said, that if I'm in charge of a company's servers, and I run a very small company, but I have to do things single handedly, and it's becoming difficult for me to run all of this alone. What if I hand you know pass on my responsibilities to cloud? They handle it on my behalf. That is where the infrastructure that I was handling is now being handled by Microsoft Azure, and I don't really have to put my thoughts into it. That is infrastructure as a service. Then we have platform as a service, where the service that is being provided by Azure is a platform. And then lastly, we have software as a service, that is SaaS. And I think it's very common. A lot of you must have already used it. Let's say this is where the Azure is providing you softwares, and using these softwares, it is a service that you are taking. So when it comes to you, that what Azure service are you using, you can tell them. If you're using a software, then you can tell them that you're using Microsoft Azure's software as a service. So this is a very over high level description of IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. But if you go deeper into it, or if you have already started learning about Azure a bit, you'll notice that these are the terms that, if you were not familiar with, but you have seen people use it, or even you have used in your own projects, or let's say in the own product in your own products that you're building. So that was a brief overview about Azure. And next thing, about the question that you all must have is, why Azure? So the first thing is, it provides more flexibility, and it has the pay as you go model. So when it comes to pay as you go model, it means that you are paying for only what you are using. Let's say I deploy a virtual machine, and my virtual machine is running from 10 a.m. in the morning to 5 p.m. in evening, and but I have the VM deployed. It's with me forever, but I'm only using it from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. A lot of you might say that I want to pay only for the time that I'm using it. It doesn't matter that I have it deployed and it's with me forever. So you have the power to actually pay for only the time that you are using. And there are also other flexibilities for this. That being said, it justifies the first point, which says more flexibility. You can say that these are the features that I'm using, and these are the features that I'm not using, so I'll just pay for these three features and I won't pay for the rest of the features. So you have that flexibility as well. And Azure, it supports so many other they support so many other app services, so many other resources, that you have the choice to use as many resources that you want, and that makes your solution more flexible and more scalable. And next we have something that is called as disaster recovery. I'll try to explain this in a very simple term. That means, let's say you are doing a work on your laptop. Let's say you're drawing a picture on your paint, and while you're drawing it, you forget to save it, and that picture is, and your computer suddenly shuts down because you're low of charge or something, and you lose that image forever because your computer doesn't was not able to save it. So you have spent hours drawing that particular picture. So there is a loss of your time, there's a loss of your resources, and if there is cloud involved in, there's also a loss of money. But with disaster recovery, the example that I gave was of paint, but in actual organization there are servers, there are a lot of things that is included, and there is huge amount of money, resources, and time that is being invested. So let's say if there is no disaster recovery and there are servers that are connected to each other, if one server shuts down and there are other servers that are interconnected and they shut down as well, so that there you'll be losing so much of data, so much of resources, so much of money. But with disaster recovery, what happens is there is always a backup. So whatever work you're doing, there is a backup that is always being formed. So that makes sure that even if there is a mishap that happens, even if there are outages that is happening, if there are bugs that suddenly appears, your data, your resource, your money never goes in a waste. So that was about disaster recovery. And more scalability and more flexibility, I think these are the terms that comes on its own when we talk about cloud. It just makes your solution so much more flexible, and you can scale it to so much so many more you can add features anytime. I'll just give you an example of the scalability. Let's say I'm making a VM, and I am there are specifications of RAM that I can add. Let's say when I'm spinning the VM, I add a 8 GB RAM, and then later on I find out that this is not enough for me. I perhaps want a 16 GB one. With cloud, with Azure, you all you need to do is go to the portal, find your resource, find where your VM is, and with just one single click you can increase it. So that that makes your solution so much more faster, so much scalable, with so much flexibility. And that basically it puts in all the points that we have discussed so far. And that is why companies, and that is why individuals are switching to cloud. There are big debates on why people should switch to cloud, why people should not. But and as the two sides of a coin, there is always a good side, there is always a bad side. But what people these days wants it, if you are building a website, I would want it to load for me within seconds. If there is a longer wait time, I probably not have the patience to wait for it to load, no matter how good your website is. So that is how technology is these days, and people want more fast and more flexible, and a solution that is perfect, that is not involving a lot of manual power, is automated. So these are the things, this is how the industry around tech is evolving, and this is how people picturize the solutions to be. So it's up upon you. And since it also involves some money, because it's like you're taking service from someone and you need to pay them, but you have a choice that you pay them only for the services you take, and only for the services that you are using, even if you're taking it, like I mentioned about the pay as you goes model of Azure. So you can take the services, but if you're not using it, you can choose not to pay for it. So these are the things that makes cloud or Azure stand out, and a reason why people are so much getting involved with Azure. So in these three slides we have an idea about what is cloud computing, what is Azure, and what are the benefits of Azure or cloud in general. Now that you know, in the next few minutes we'll see a demo on how we can use Azure. So before that, I know a lot of you must be having questions that it costs us money as students. We may not have the access to Azure, or we may not have credit card. How do I pay for it? Microsoft has made that even easier for you. So these are the links that is mentioned. You can you can log in with your personal ID, and you can get approximately $100 of credits, which is a huge amount, and you can use that to learn and build the solutions. I'll just go over the last point, that is, this one is about the GitHub education pack. If you're a student, I personally believe, and this is something that all of you must apply for. I'm free to talk more about it if we have time towards the end of the session, or if not, you can ask questions about this to me. So this GitHub education pack, all that you need to do is you need to have a GitHub account. If a student a student ID, let's say if you are of belong if you belong to college XYZ, they generally ask for your XYZ college ID. But I, as a student, I did not have a college ID. I used my personal ID, and then I submitted my college ID proof as a ID as a proof that I am a student. So you can get this up and running in just a few minutes. It takes an application for you to fill, and probably either within 24 hours or within 72 hours you'll receive a response, and you'll have the pack activated. Within this pack there is Azure credits for students, and they give you $100 per month for a year. So you understand, you get a year around to skill using Azure, to learn so much using Azure. Other than that, there are also a lot of services that they provide. There is Canva, where I made this website, and I'm not sure if you've heard about this tool. Then there is name.com. There are a lot of services. I wouldn't spend much time here, but I suggest that all of you go through this link, especially the last one. If you're a student, it will definitely help you gain access to a lot of nice services. So yeah, that's enough of the theoretical part, and we'll quickly move to the demo. And I hope you're ready. If you have any questions, do you want me to stop now, or do you want me to perhaps address them after the session? I'll just wait a few seconds. Chanchal, if you can reply me saying that when do we want to address the questions, or if we have any questions so far.
We don't have any questions as such now, so we can take the
Yeah.
questions in the after the session.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So I'll just move to a browser where I have already opened my Azure portal. So this is the Azure portal. If you are an absolute beginner and have never come across this portal, this is how it should look. You have an option to switch it to the dark mode. If you prefer that, go ahead and do it. This is once you have logged in, once you have a subscription, this is exactly how it will look. And here under your name, you'll have you have an option to view your account. Under notifications, they also show you how much of credit you have used, how much is left. So in that way, you don't need to go to your cost management center and see how much you have used and how much is left. But anyway, whatever resource you're using or whatever resource you're spinning up, it gives you an approximate count of how much it will cost per hour, so that you can make a calculation accordingly and then choose things. So basically this is how the portal will look. And our main thing is, whenever we are trying to work with Azure, the most important part that we need to work here with is creating a resource. Because creating a resource basically means using an Azure service. And before we go to create a resource and like work through the demo, so these are the tools that works the that is very helpful. First is the Microsoft Learn module. Like this is Microsoft Learn that has a very good set of resources. A lot of knowledge that I have today about Microsoft products is from Microsoft Learn. So make sure that you go through them for upscaling, or even for certification you get them for free as well. And then you have Azure Monitor. I'll just give you a brief about what Azure Monitor is. So it says that it monitors your apps and infrastructure. So if at any time there is something that is going down, it will tell you that it is not working as per your expectations, and perhaps this is something that you need to change. And also, there are times when there are outages, or there are certain data centers that are not working perfectly. All of them you can see in Azure Monitor. And lastly, there's Microsoft Defender. I think the word Defender itself says what it is supposed to do is to secure your apps and the infrastructure. And the most important part is about cost management, because at the end of the day, whatever resources we are using, especially for big companies or even for individuals, cost is a big factor. You cannot spend a lot of money in doing a simple task. So whatever resource you're spinning up, it's a good habit to analyze and optimize your spend, and make sure that you're paying for only what you are taking for yourself. Oops, sorry. So now that we have an overview of the portal, let's get started with creating a resource. All that we need to do is just click on create resource. So I'll give you two examples. The first one is of a virtual machine, and if you see, that is there in the first, the first thing that you see when you create a resource is the virtual machine one, because it is the most popularly used. I'll give an example. As I click on create, I'll also give an example why we are building this and how are people actually using this particular resource or this particular service. I'll give you an example. Let's say, as a student, if you're interning at a company and not a full-time employee, and especially if you are amidst lockdown, it becomes impossible. And you have perhaps seen in 2020 that at that time delivery services weren't working properly, and for you to, and there are companies that needs particular system requirements. Let's say they will need 32 GB of RAM, or they'll need you to have a Linux system, but you're working on a Windows one. So is it better for you to have a dual core, or should you just switch from Windows to Linux? So these are a lot of questions that comes to your mind, and the company is not able to ship you the hardware. So what do you do? That is in these moments that spinning a virtual machine on cloud, it comes to play. And also, if you see, as we work, we'll also see how much money you're spending. A good machine, a good laptop, it costs you around 80,000 plus, which means it's close to 1 lakh INR. Like even the laptop that I received from office is close to 1 lakh rupees. And very strong powerful machines generally cost very huge. And if you see in big organizations or even in small organizations, um, you know spending so much money in infrastructure is a very heavy spend. But what if we can have the exact same result that we want through the hardware using cloud, but we are also saving a lot of money? That is where this is just another example why people are using to create a virtual machine using Microsoft Azure. I'll also give you another example of what I use. It's a practical use. We're using this in within Microsoft as well. Like I am a support engineer, and let's say there is a customer who is saying that hey, I have 16 servers, I have one client side, and this is the issue that I am facing. And as support engineers, what if I'll have to recreate the issue, but I cannot all of a sudden have 16 servers on my laptop. So what do? I spin up a VM, I make the exact configuration of what the customer told me, and then I recreate the issue, and then I give him a solutions. So at that moment, just imagine having actually those servers in actuality, in in not in cloud but in reality. Imagine how much of a heavy spend that would be. And for every customer that we're handling, every customer has a different infrastructure, and having them in the reality would lead in loss of time, resources, money, and everything. That is where cloud acts as a savior. And these are just of the few examples that I have given, and it changes from organization to organization, also from individuals to individuals. Like, I'll also give an example. When while I was trying how to use Linux, and I was working on a Windows machine, instead of using WSL, I just wanted to have full hands-on effect on how Linux works, and that is where I created a virtual machine for me on Linux, and I just tried out things there. So this is an example of how as students you can use it. I'll and now that you have an idea of how we can use it, I'll just go ahead and show you how you can create one for yourself. So the subscription, since I'm using my office account, there is a list of subscriptions, but for you there probably be either one or two subscriptions. So you can select any one. And next is the resource group. So what is the resource group is basically, it is, let's count this as a group, or let's count this as a box that contains all the resources that you are using. So if my resource name is HM, that stands for my initial, under HM resource or in the HM box, all the services that I'm using, like let's say this virtual machine service, it will be within it. So that makes it easier for navigation, and also for tracking which resource group is performing how, and also a lot of factors that comes into consideration. So just create a new one. All that you need to give is a unique name. I'll just give HM and RG. It says that I don't have one permission to create a resource group. It is probably because I have never created in this. Let's see if I can create in some one else else's. Looks like I don't have a permission to create in any of them. Let's see if I can find any. This looks like a problem. Let's see if I can find any or do anything. I'll just try and move across various resources if in case one gives a permission to me. I don't have a permission here either. This generally happens a lot, because especially within organization, since this is I'm using an organization one, it becomes a bit difficult for me to get permission for know using it. I am not having permissions for building here as well. I don't have an option to create a resource group here either. There is, and another, am I able to see resource groups here? So let me see if I can log into my personal ID, and from there I can spin one. I'll do that. I'm not sure if I have credits on my personal ID, but I'll just sign in and see if I can do anything with it. I hope I have some idea, otherwise it will be a big toll on demo cost. Let's hope that I have it here. Looks like I have one. Okay, so let's. I have logged into my personal ID, and from there I'll search virtual machine. Okay, I have some credit. Great. So this is the virtual machine resource that I am trying to create. I have clicked on it. I went to marketplace. I searched for virtual machine, and I have this here. Sorry for the thing that happened right now, because I had logged in with my corporate account and I wasn't able to create a resource group there. But no worries. My personal ID has come up to be a savior, and we can create one here. It's just taking some time. Yeah. Now we come back to the same page where I was having a problem. And one thing that you see here is Visual Studio Enterprise
Hey
subscription.
Hemantika, sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but there are people who are asking that the while signing up for the Microsoft Azure portal, it's asking for the credit card and debit card details, and they don't have any card details, so can just help them out with this.
Do you want me to help them up right now, or do you
You can
want me
just tell
to?
them that I think the college ID works fine to get the credits, right? If I'm not wrong.
Exactly, exactly. So, like all of these resources, have you used all of them? So there is this another one as well for free for students. The third one. I hope you have pasted all the links on the chat.
Yep, we have like I will just paste that link in
Yeah,
the chat as well.
yeah.
Perfect.
Perhaps
Thank you.
that can be done, and if not, this session will be recorded. And if you have any problems, I'll always be there to help you offline. And one more thing, that's a nice reminder since you told about the subscription. So in case if I'm sure all of the links will work, and also the GitHub student pack that I just talked about, but it takes some time. And also you can be a part of student ambassador programs like the one by Microsoft, which even I was a part of, Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors program, and that also gives you credit. So you can also be a part of that, but that again will take you through an application process. You need to get selected. But just as a gentle reminder, if anybody is interested in communities and such related events, you can do the same. So now let's get back to the demo part. So subscription here is the Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. If you were selected as a part of the Microsoft Launch Student Ambassador community, you'll also get your subscription under this Visual Studio one. Now resource groups, I have a lot of them here, but I'll just show you how to create one. I just click on create new, and let's see, I write it as HMRG, my initials, and resource groups RG. It just gets created like that. So my virtual machine name can be test VM. The region, it can be any region that you're closer to, but I suggest that you use US regions, because though it's far, but most of the times the data centers here is always available. It I have never faced a problem here. That is why I suggest you to be here. Next, these are not required, that if there is any particular infrastructure redundancy that is required, there is an availability zone or anything that you want to set. So you can skip all of these. The next important part is the image. The image here, it stands for the kind of operating system that you want to choose. So there are so many. Then there is uh, 2022 server, there is Windows 10 Pro. So I'll just click on Windows 10 Pro, and there are different sizes for it. And if you see, there are other given prices for this as well. Like the one with 3.5 gig memory, it costs around 3,800 rupees. The other one costs 5,000 rupees, so you can select any of them. I'll choose the less cost one for this example. And you can give the a username to the administrator account. This username is actually the one that you give while you are going to log into the virtual machine. So you go to your username and give it any name. I'm giving this the name Himantika. And password, I'll just type in something. I hope you type in something that you can remember. Oh, looks like, yeah. So with password, you must make sure that it follows all the criteria. That is, it should have an uppercase, it should have a special character, it should be 12, the length should be 12 and more. So all of these, make sure you are maintaining all these criteria to have the password. And once that is done, you don't really need to click much here. All of these, let's keep it as it is. And you need to do one here. Next, we go to disks. We check for if it's SSD or if it's an HDD. If it's an SSD, you know that it will charge you more money, but if it's an HDD, it will cost you some less money. So if you want to save some money here, you can choose for standard SSD or standard HDD. It totally depends upon you, and there's nothing more that you need to change here. I did not change anything there as well. Then here I'm not making any changes to the virtual network, or I'm changing the subnet as well. I'm keeping the subnet as usual. Generally we need to change the subnet if you're spinning up a lot of VMs, and then you're connecting it with the domains. That time you don't want them to fall in the same subnet. So those criterias come in, but for this particular example we don't need any such, or we don't have any such criterias, and we don't need to have any of them. So far it looks good. Next we go to management, we keep it as it is, then we go to advanced, scroll down and see if there is something that we need to do. Nope. Next we go to tags, we keep it as it is, and the next part is review plus create. So here Azure is running checks for us to make sure that everything is correct. There is nothing that is needed to be done from our end, and it shows that the validation has passed. It makes at every moment, since this is a service that makes sure that you're aware of the money that you're spending. So it keeps you, or it gives you a reminder here as well, that you are being charged rupees 5 rupees per hour. So if you are running a VM for 5 hours, you get 5 rupees into 5 hours, which means you're paying 25 rupees per day. So that depends upon your usage. That's all. That is all that I needed to do for creating the VM, and now I click on create. So it takes some time. It is making sure that the resources, everything is getting built on the background. It generally takes a few minutes, not longer than that. And now it redirects to you to the place where you'll get all other information, like if there is a subscription key related to it, you'll get that. Then there are other important informations as well that you might need to work with it, and everything will be available here. So currently we can see what is being created. You can see that the network security group, that is the NSG, has been created. The VNet, that the virtual network, has been created. My um, IP is also been created, and other resources will be created here, and we can find all of them being listed. So as it is going forward, as we are spending time, we can see that more and more resources, more and more things that are required for the VM to be created is getting created, and more checks are being passed. So we'll give this some time, and probably we can use this time to address the questions that we have. Chanchal, are people still facing the same problem with the credit card part?
I'm not sure about that, but there is one question. We have to create
Yeah.
the account with college ID or our personal mail.
So what I did was, a personal mail also works for me. Like you see, this is my personal mail, and there is no special subscription ID for that. You can do that as well, or you can also create with your college ID. Like I never had a college ID, but with my personal ID, it worked perfectly fine. So both of these can work for you. I hope that
Also,
clears the doubt. Yeah.
yes, and also like they can try for the GitHub student developer pack as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I highly suggest that, because not only for Azure, and also that uh, other links that I provided, it will give you credits only for a month, but with GitHub student developer pack you'll get it throughout the year. So you have the entire year to skill up on Azure, the entire year to learn about Azure. And with Azure, there, this is just an example that I am showing, so that you have an idea about how to move or navigate through the portal, how you can create a VM for yourself. But there are so many other features that you can use. Like my favorite one is the cognitive service, and I would love that after this session, for all of you, once you have your Azure account up and running, and also, I'll also share some learning resources with you. I would love if you can probably tweet out to me, or send me a LinkedIn message or a Twitter DM saying that this is what you have built with Twitter, and I love to see that. The cognitive services is my favorite part. So with cognitive services, what you can do is, There is this text to speech, speech to text, there is this image recognition one, then there is my favorite one was the one with emotions, sentiment analysis is there. So there are so many things that you can do with Azure Cognitive Services. You can definitely go and try them. And also, if there are ML enthusiasts who are there in the audience now, the resource that or the service that I'm showing is just an example. There's so many things that you can do with Azure. And then there is an option where you don't need to have a very high computation or a high computing machine with you, and you can actually train and build your models on Azure. So there is automated ML and other features for that. I would love for you to go through them as well. And perhaps if you're building anything at all, make sure that you share that with me. So now that it is done, we can see that our deployment is completed. And then there are some deployment details here, that is a lot of things that you probably don't need to spend your time on now. So I'll just quickly go to resource. Here, the agent status, it says that there is something that is not ready, and let's see if we can solve the problem here. Otherwise, what you can do is you can click on connect, and you can download the RDP file. So the RDP file is the one that helps you to get connected to the virtual machine. So this is my RDP file. If I click on open the file, I hope the error that we saw is not creating any problem. And then I click on more resources, and I'll use a different account for this. So let's see if a username that I put in there works here, or would I need to work on something else? Generally, the username and the password that you give there is enough, and you don't need to do anything more for that. And now that it shows that it is connecting to an IP. If I'm not sure if you got it, let me try and extend this. You'll see this is my IP, and the one that you saw there with double colon 3389 or something related to that, that was my port to which this got connected. So you can see that in just few minutes and in just few clicks, where we did not have to add much information at all, we had a VM ready. I connected it with the credentials that I had put in the portal, and now my virtual machine is opening for me. The virtual machine that I created was a Windows 10 Pro, and it generally takes some time to set things up, because it's very similar to how you get your laptop, on your hand. um, it makes sure that it's adding some everything. So I think if you have bought a laptop and recently, you see that that is a very similar thing that comes up when installing Windows. So same thing has come up to me as well. And my virtual machine, this is a virtual machine that you are seeing right now. It's open, you can work with it. If there is something that you need to you need to play around, you are free to do that. The motto of this demo was to show how you can easily create one, and how organizations are actually using virtual machine to solve problems, or let's say to few save resources in their organization. And while we were creating, you have also seen that there are options on how much money we are spending. There are options on how we can analyze the cost that is being spent. And it gives you a per hour usage. So anything that you're spending, it is in your capability, and you don't need to pay any extra. Now that we have done, it's also a good habit that you delete the resource if it's not in use. Since I'll not use this resource anymore, I'll just come back to HMRG, and then I'll delete the resource group. And I also explain why we are deleting the resource group, because all of these, it is causing some carbon footprint, and we don't want to harm the environment. If you are not using the resource, please delete it, because the environment is already being harmed. And if we need it, we also need to sacrifice something. But if you don't need anything at all, make sure that you delete it, and the delete option is there, right there. All that you need to do is just type in the resource group name and delete it. So deletion takes again some more time. And since I deleted the entire resource group, even the virtual machine that was within the resource group will also be deleted. So if you remember, the resource group is actually a box that contains the services, and for this particular demo my service was VM. So my box, I just deleted the box, so with the box the VM machine will also be deleted. So that was all that I wanted to show about Azure and wanted to tell you about Azure. I hope you have learned something from this. I end this session with the hope that you have liked it and you'll do something with this. You'll try it out. Also, if you are trying to get started, you can just click on this link. I'll make sure that Chanchal or the other organizers post this on the chat. You can go through this learning path. You'll have a brief idea, or you'll also have an in-depth idea of what Azure is, and then you can start building it for your purpose. So that was all from my end. Thank you so much for being such patient listeners.
Yeah, thank you, Hemantika, for such a nice demo and all the theoretical part regarding Azure. We have few questions. The first one is like, what is the purpose of creating a VM?
I think I mentioned this in a lot of examples, but I'll just tell you yet again. I have given an example of why we create a VM in my job. Like I'm a support engineer, and there are customers who comes up with the issue and says that, hey, I have 16 servers and one client in my infrastructure, and this is what I am facing. And as support engineers, we are supposed to troubleshoot the issue for them, but for that I also need to know what is the exact issue. I need to recreate the exact issue as well. But for us to create those 16 servers, having those in reality would be a big problem, a big spend of resource and money as well. For this particular resource, for this particular example, we just simply spin up a VM. You saw that it takes on just a few minutes and just few clicks. So once that is ready, you can have 16 servers, you can have one client, you can then simply recreate the problem that the customer is facing and solve it for them. This is one example. And another example is, as students, like I mentioned, if you want to learn how to use Linux, but you are a Windows user, you don't want to change from being a Windows user, you don't want to use WSL, you don't want to uh, you know you also don't want to change dual boot your machine. That is where you can also spin up a Linux VM for you and practice there. The next question that we have is how much credits
How?
it takes to create a VM. So I think
Yes.
even I showed that again on during my demo. I hope my screen was also visible on the same. So what if you have seen that there are a lot of things where you can save on the resource. I chose a premium SSD. You can choose a standard SSD, you can choose a standard HDD or a premium HDD. That again reduces the resource. And then there are again certain CPU variations, like how many CPUs you want and all of these. And if you would have noticed, there were options where one costed you around 5,000 rupees per month, the other costed you 3,000 rupees per month. I chose the one with 3,000 rupees because I found that that is what suited my need the best. And while everything was ready and we clicked on review plus create, we saw that there was also an option that showed us how much it is costing us per hour. And the VM and the configurations that I chose, it was costing me around 5.25 rupees. And depending upon that, if I'm using for 5 hours, it will cost me 25 rupees. 25 into 5, around 26.25 paise it will cost me. So that is how you can see. Other than that, also from the Azure portal, while I was navigating you, if you remember, there was a point that showed cost management. So even from cost management, you can review and analyze how much you're spending. Yeah. I think you're
Yep,
on
I
mute.
was on mute. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I hope it's clear to the one who asked the questions. We can go with this session was really amazing, and everyone is thanking for you to give a brief demo and all. So yeah, we would like to conclude the session, and thank you for
Yeah.
coming and be here for the session.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And to all the viewers there, it's actually a very big pleasure for you being here. I have enjoyed thoroughly, and I hope that you have taken away something. If you have any additional questions, make sure that you reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I would happy to answer them. If you also have any questions about GitHub Student Pack or about the community that I mentioned about Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador community, you can also ask about that. And I'm
Yeah,
really thank you for for all of you to be here.
yeah. Thank you for joining in.
It's a pleasure.
I think we can end the
Bye.
session.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.